This hour of news and views is sponsored by African Muslims Agency. African Muslims Agency are picking up hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond. Workers and their families should prepare themselves for a tumultuous future now that the coalition of the right has been cemented through the Government of National Unity, made up of the DA, ANC, IFP, Good, and the Patriotic Alliance. These are sentiments of our NUMSA national spokesperson, Phakamile Hlubi-Majola, who's going to be joining us shortly, and we'll be, just delving into the impact of the newly formed Government of National Unity, which has sparked significant concerns among workers and their families, with some critics arguing that this alliance represents a return to right-wing dominance, echoing global trends towards conservative politics. We are now joined by Phakamile Hlubi-Majola, the national spokesperson of the National Union of Medical Workers, to discuss these developments and what they mean for the future of South African workers. Phakamile, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time. Coming really, really strong against the GNU, saying, this is a recolonization of Africa, and South Africa being the first country to be, recolonized. Why so anti-GNU? This is supposed to be, a government that's going to reflect, the re-emerging of South Africa as a political powerhouse, supposed to represent unity, political parties of varying ideologies coming together, something that is supposedly supposed to reflect 1994, when democracy dawned on South Africa and there was this euphoria of unity and coming together. Doesn't matter what your political or, social, religious standing was. But you seem to be thinking otherwise. Your thoughts on the GNU, which are, rather strong?
Good morning, Slylo, and good morning to your listeners. I hope you can hear me very well.
Loud and clear.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It really is an honor. I do enjoy engaging with your hosts on Salam Media. I'm very interested in what you just said in your characterization of this unity government. And the first question I'd ask you is, if this is really a genuine government of national unity, then why is the EFF and the MK, why are they excluded?
Well, we're hearing that they were invited, and I think, the onus was on them on whether or not they'll be interested in joining. They had demands and, terms and conditions on if they join, such and such is supposed to be made, so and so must step down. I think, yes, it's not necessarily a government of national unity. I think it's just coined that, but it's essentially a coalition. Yes.
It is definitely not a government of national unity, and I do like some of the way that you characterized it, because it's very clear that what this Ramaphosa government is trying to do is they're trying to sort of mislead the public and deliberately create this sort of false idea that we are repeating 1994. They're trying to also conjure up those memories of 1994 when there was euphoria and everybody was excited because apartheid had come to an end, and now we have this government of national unity. I think, first of all, we need to dispel the myths. This is a lie. There's no unity, genuine unity, because if this was a government of national unity, then MK and EFF would be part of this government, and they're not. And this is by design. The ANC actually lost power and was humiliated at the polls because of its failure to advance the interests of the majority of people. People in South Africa are very, very unhappy. The working class majority their lives have not been transformed in the manner in which the ANC has been promising to transform the lives of Black people since 1994. The majority of Black people in this country, their living conditions, unfortunately, are still similar to what they were in pre-apartheid. And this is why the ANC lost so much power in these elections, because of its failure to drive radical policies for the improvement of the lives of people. And instead of the ANC taking that 40% that it got from the vote and going into a coalition with parties like the EFF, MK, and others whose manifestos are clearly about advancing the interests of the majority of people, the ANC then coined the term GNU to cover up for the fact that it was going into a coalition with the DA, knowing that if it goes direct and announces that it's going to a coalition with the DA, the alliance partners, namely COSATU and SACP, will reject that coalition. So they had to come up with this term GNU as a way to trick the electorate and their base into believing that this is a GNU of 1994, when in fact it's a coalition with the right wing. The DA is right wing. And if you look at who the parties are in this coalition now, it is the DA, it is the Patriotic Alliance, it is the Freedom Front Plus, and IFP. Those are all right-wing formations. They are anti-working class. They are anti the trade unions and the rights of workers. The DA in particular, as being the controlling portion of that, has a manifesto which very, very clearly outlines how it intends to undermine the rights that workers have gained in the last 30 years. So we must not fool ourselves. What the ANC has done is to align with the right wing in this country, and as workers, those of us who are on the left should brace ourselves, because what's going to happen from that alliance is workers' rights and all the gains that we have made in the last 30 years will be under attack.
Why is there such a a seemingly distrust for the ANC? I mean, going into this coalition, they said they won't be folding in any of their policies. Their founding ideologies, for being pro-black, pro-poor, pro-working class, are still intact. It doesn't matter who they'll be working with; those are non-negotiables. Why is there such a distrust that there's going to be this shift to a more right-wing, pro-capital, agenda that's going to be perpetrated by the ANC now, when they've come out and said, well, nothing will change. We're still the majority shareholder in this coalition. We still are the ones that have the final say. But you seem to think otherwise.
Well, the DA, if you've been following South African politics for the last 30 years, you know very well the kind of party that the Democratic Alliance and its leadership is. You know very well that the DA does not compromise. And since 2019, the DA has been planning an alliance with the ANC, specifically with the ANC under Ramaphosa. This has been something that they've not hidden. There was a time, for example, when Ramaphosa made the State of the Nation address. If you recall, he made the utterances at that time to say that government does not create jobs, business create jobs. And the first people who came out to clap hands for them was the DA, to say, thank you, Ramaphosa, for finally articulating DA policy. And we will support you, and we will support an ANC led by Ramaphosa. There was also a video which went viral not too long ago, and I remember even IOL did Roscoe Palmer of IOL did an article on it a couple of weeks ago, where in 2019 Helen Zille was recorded in a meeting saying that in 2024 the ANC will get 40% of the vote. We only need, as the DA, to get 20%, and we will impose our demands on Ramaphosa's ANC. And if you listen to what Helen Zille has been saying this week, where she has been very adamant to remind not just the ANC, but any other party, including the PA, that has expressed that it wants to join the GNU. She's been at pains to remind people that this is our GNU. We are the original founders of this GNU. The original members of the GNU are the ANC, the IFP, and the DA. And anybody else who wants to play in our little sandbox has to apply to us first, and we must agree. You don't just get to join because the ANC said you can join. So already the DA has made it very clear who the boss of this establishment is going to be. Helen Zille is going to be our de facto prime minister, and the policies of the DA is what is going to be advanced here. And they've not hidden that. So I think for anybody to actually believe the ANC when they claim that their policies are going to remain intact, I'm sorry, but that's just naive. It's naive of the ANC leadership to even say that, because if they really were genuine about ensuring that their policies remain intact, then they should have had a coalition with like-minded political formations whose policies reflect what they reflect. For example, let's just talk about foreign policy. How is this going to work, Slyla, when you think about the fact that the ANC, up until just before the elections, was driving a campaign at the International Court of Justice for Israel to not just to be condemned, but for action to be taken against the Israeli government for the genocide of people in Palestine. When at the same time it's going to a coalition with the party, the DA. The DA, as you know, its position on Palestine is that Israel is defending itself. The DA does not recognize that there's a genocide happening in Gaza, and it believes that Israel has the right to defend itself by whatever means necessary. That is a fundamental contradiction. So how are they going to move in terms of foreign policy? You've got an ANC that does not support, for example, defending the Ukraine. It wants to be neutral on the issue of Ukraine. The DA wants the ANC to take a stronger stance in defending the Ukraine. Just on foreign policy alone, how do we expect these two parties to work well and to play well together when they are so fundamentally opposed on the issue of foreign policy?
And on that, I was actually in Cape Town for the first sitting of Parliament, and I actually asked the SG of the ANC, Philip Balula, that exact question. And well, he lamented that fact that, well, nothing is going to be changing. Their foreign policy is still intact. The ICJ court case is still going to be ongoing, and no one should be panicking. So I think it's just a stand and cake kind of situation. But I wanna, you touched a bit on, some of the political parties that would have made up this GNU, or the ANC could have leaned a bit more off, looking at, well, they are essentially breakaways of the ANC when you look at the MK and the EFF. But how much of the formation of the GNU itself can be attributed to the lackluster approach from these political parties in coming to the party and making sure that the ANC does work with them? I mean, we've heard from the ANC saying we've tried numerous times to speak to the leadership of MK. We were quote unquote blue ticked. There was no response. The EFF, they came out. And according to the ANC, also made outrageous demands, the stepping down of President Cyril Ramaphosa and so on and so forth. How much of the formation of this unholy coalition, according to many, can be attributed to the EFF and the MK and their willingness to be mature and to work with the ANC and play the long game, essentially, and making sure that the DA, doesn't essentially become government?
My understanding from some of the tweets by Chibambu on X is that he says that it's not true that they made the demand that Ramaphosa must be removed as claimed by the ANC. And in fact, their position is that the ANC keeps pushing this narrative because the ANC actually had no genuine interest in aligning itself with either the MK or the EFF. And if you think about the politics of this prior to us getting to the elections, there is no love lost between members of the ANC leadership, the EFF, and specifically the MK party. I think, and I think I can believe what the deputy president of EFF says when you think about the dynamics on the ground between the parties. Secondly, on the issue of MK, I do agree with you that I think the MK needed to be more organized in terms of how it conducted itself in the talks in the days leading up to these coalition agreements. We've heard reports of the fact that apparently, for example, in KZN, they didn't show up on time, according to the IFP, for coalition talks. But if we really analyze whether or not there's an actual genuine willingness to work with MK and EFF, it is my personal view that I do not think that the ANC, even the IFP, have a real desire to work with MK and EFF because of the political dynamics. If you look at the IFP, for example, the IFP got a lot of funding from the Oppenheimers. And we have to ask ourselves, what was that funding for? Do you really think that the Oppenheimers wanted the IFP to go into a coalition with the MK party? I don't think so. I really don't think so. And there was a lot of fear mongering in the media against any kind of coalition with the MK and the EFF. You'll recall that the DA did that Swart Gafar, that disgraceful ad campaign, where they actually branded that alliance as a doomsday alliance, basically making the media and the markets very, very hostile towards any kind of working arrangement with the EFF and MK. They were branded as sort of chaotic, as being parties that were going to destabilize South Africa. And what was it really that the DA and specifically the markets had a problem with these organizations? It's because of the demand for nationalization. You see, nationalization is something that makes white capitalists very, very uncomfortable, because they worry about the fact that they don't want to lose ownership, the ill-gotten gains that they obtained under apartheid and colonialism. They don't want to lose ownership and control of the mines and the minerals of this country. And both these parties, EFF and MK, are calling for nationalization of mines, nationalization of land, and these are policies that white monopoly capital in this country is very hostile towards. So we must actually understand this. Understand that against that type of context, and against the fact that you have an ANC led by Ramaphosa that went out of its way to jail Jacob Zuma for corruption charges, and then the very same Jacob Zuma comes back, launches a party in the ANC with the goal of basically winning the base of the ANC to the MK, which a lot of people can say Zuma succeeded in, because he came out with 14% support in these elections. He came out of nowhere. He didn't even campaign properly, but just the name Zuma garnered this party 14% of the vote. And that vote, by the way, was taken directly from the ANC, and went straight to the MK party. So yes, I think the real truth about that is actually that the ANC leadership has no interest in working with MK for that reason. And of course, as you know, there's no love lost between the ANC and EFF. And so that demonization of that alliance is what actually prevented it from being successful.
We have run out of time, but just one last question. We are here now. We could possibly be here for the next 5 years. This is the new dispensation. Looking ahead, what are the key challenges and opportunities, for South Africa labor movements in light of this, new political reality that we're facing?
What I said in my op-ed is that where South Africa is today is not unique. It's happening all over the world. The world is becoming more right-wing. It's happening in America. There's a shift to the right because of the failure of neoliberal policies, the failure of capitalism to transform the lives of the majority of people. It's happening even in Europe, where right-wing organizations are also rising to power. And what does this mean? What it means is that the working class, those of us who are on the left, those of us who care about shared wealth, it's time for us to unite. It's time for us to unite around our demands and to really launch a very, very active program to advance our demands and to ensure that everything that we've obtained, especially in South Africa, we need to make sure that everything we've obtained and that we've won in the last 30 years is not lost in this unholy alliance that the ANC has decided to forge with the right-wing DA. We've got a lot of work to do to make sure that we protect our gains. We protect, for example, the national minimum wage. We must defend our right to strike, which the DA has made very clear it's going to be trying to undermine. We must make sure that workers in this country are united around pushing even this right-wing coalition to transform the economy in our own interest. We are the biggest voting bloc, and we must never ever forget that it was the working class that actually that was responsible for the collapse of the apartheid system. So it can be us again that can ensure that any kind of right-wing agenda that seeks to entrench itself in South Africa is collapsed, and collapsed by us, because we cannot allow apartheid to return through the back door through the Democratic Alliance. We need to make sure that we advance our own agenda and our own and ensure that we are able to advance our own principles even during this time.
There you have it, NUMSA National Spokesperson Phakamile Hlubi-Majola. Always a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Me.
There you have it. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting times ahead. But yeah, we'll be here. We'll be giving you the latest. Some are saying, this unholy coalition, quote unquote, might not even make it, for until the next election. So some are giving it a year, other 6 months. But yeah, we will be here waiting, watching, and giving you the latest. We're going to go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll be having that Fired Up segment, hashtag Fired Up with Hafiz Imran Chunara. He's a personal excellence mentor and CEO of Africa Muslims Agency. This week's topic is take every opportunity to reinvent yourself.